Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to briefly analyze how Arteta exposed Lampard's tactics in Arsenal's 3-1 win over Chelsea. When we break down the game and we do look at the board, we have Chelsea in a 4-3-3 and Arsenal starting the game in a 4-2-3-1. So first, when we do look at the board, we're going to break down how Arsenal were able to disrupt Chelsea from creating chances, and then look to some examples to see how Arsenal were able to get into good positions. When we look at Arsenal's approach out of possession, what we ended up seeing was that Lacazette would step forward to press the center back on the ball, and in that midfield zone, Arsenal were equipped with a 3v3 battle. Smith Rowe would step to Conte, and then you would see Elneny and Xhaka stepping into the path of Kovacic and Mount. That means that in the wider areas, Martinelli and Saka would close down the Chelsea fullbacks, and Tierney and Bellerin would be tasked with ensuring that Werner and Pulisic couldn't get into the game. When we focus on Arsenal's press, we did see some variations as to how they were looking to close down Chelsea. For instance, there was a time where Rowe stepped to Zuma but blocked off the passing lane to Conte, while Lacazette shifted across, and you had Xhaka and Kovacic with Saka dropping off to close down Mount because Elneny was shifting over to cover the center of the pitch. Smith Rowe did a very good job of harrying Conte and ensuring that he couldn't shift possession freely from left to right. And there was an example where Mendy bypassed Lacazette and Martinelli pinching on Zuma for an unmarked Reece James to push forward, but Xhaka did a very good job of shifting across to step ahead of the Chelsea right back, but also holding his position to ensure that the ball couldn't get to Kovacic to help Chelsea push forward. Another key component to Arteta's tactics witnessed Elneny and Xhaka dropping off into the half spaces to ensure that Chelsea couldn't get a 3v2 overload out in those wider areas. We witnessed Spurs do this successfully with Højbjerg and Sissoko, and here Elneny and Xhaka also had relative success. There was a time where Chilwell was playing a pass into Mount occupying Bellerin, and you witnessed Elneny shifting over to close down Werner, and you had Smith Rowe ahead of Conte. We could look to a time where Thiago Silva clipped the ball over Arsenal's right side pressure for an unmarked Werner dropping ahead of Holding and Bellerin, and you have Elneny shifting towards Mount with Saka stepping to Chilwell and Smith Rowe ahead of Conte. And what happens next is that Werner nods down the ball for Mount, but Elneny's already in a good position in that half space to ensure that Werner can't combine with his teammate. If you look to Arsenal's left-hand side, you have Kovacic on the ball ahead of Martinelli, and then Tierney's just ahead of James, and once again, you have Xhaka in the half space occupying Pulisic. Over on the left-hand side, we witnessed Chilwell pushing forward ahead of Bellerin due to Mount's deeper position, and that's where we see Elneny tracking the movement of Werner into the left channel. And if we look to one final example, with Chilwell pegging back Bellerin, you can see Saka and Elneny tracking Mount's run into left half space, while Smith Rowe shifts across to close down Werner. This results in the Chelsea left back playing a tame cross into the box that Holding comfortably clears. So through midfield pressing and having Xhaka and Elneny drop off into the half spaces, Arteta's tactics revolved around issues that Chelsea encountered in previous matches. And when we break down how Arsenal were able to exploit Chelsea's backline, once again, it was Arteta getting the fullbacks to get into advanced positions beyond Pulisic and Werner, and all you have to do is look to Chelsea's previous win against West Ham, where Aaron Cresswell got into several good positions by pushing forward into Chelsea's third. And here, Arsenal were able to get into those dangerous positions in the opening minutes. When we look to the first example, we witness Bellerin sliding the ball around Werner for Saka ahead of Chilwell. Saka receives Bellerin's pass ahead of Chilwell with Conte shifting over, and this is where you see Bellerin making an overlapping run beyond Werner to receive the ball back. But Bellerin's delivery to the front post was cleared by Thiago Silva into the path of Martinelli, who side foots a tame first-time effort wide of the net, but still, Bellerin's overlapping run created a chance for Arsenal. Shortly after that, Xhaka received the ball from Marty and turned to locate Smith Rowe and Martinelli ahead of James, while Tierney was running beyond Pulisic down the left channel. Xhaka splits Pulisic and Conte for Tierney's forward run down that left channel to place the Arsenal left back in a position to create a goal-scoring opportunity. However, Tierney's delivery into the box results in Thiago Silva towering over Saka and Martinelli to clear Chelsea's defensive lines. There was a time where an unmarked Smith Rowe received Saka's pass between the lines, and he shifted play out to Martinelli ahead of James, and this is where we see Tierney beginning to push forward into vacant space down the left channel. Martinelli awaits the overlapping run from Tierney to poke the ball into left half space as Arsenal create a 2v1 overload against James. But once again, it's James cutting out a tame Tierney pullback for Martinelli breaking into the box. However, in the build-up to Arsenal's opener, it was Xhaka bypassing Mount's press with the ball over the top of Werner for Tierney breaking into the left channel unmarked. Tierney receives Xhaka's ball over Werner in that space to pull out James in a 1v1 situation, but rather than attempting another pullback delivery, this time Tierney cuts across James to break into the Chelsea box where he's fouled by the Chelsea right back to earn Arsenal a penalty that Lacazette converted. Later on in that half, it was Holding bypassing Mount with the ball to Saka, who dropped into his own half to drag out Thiago Silva, and when he turns you could see Ballerz running beyond Werner down the right channel. When Ballerz runs at Chilwell, the runs of Lacazette and Martinelli peg back Kanté and Zouma due to Thiago Silva recovering his position. And this creates space for Saka to receive a squared ball in ample space despite Werner's attempt at tracking back to make a challenge. Saka receives Bellerin's pass across Werner, but when he dribbles towards goal, Kanté shifts across to make a desperate tackle that awards Arsenal the free kick that Xhaka converts. In the second half, Lampard attempted to adjust by bringing on Jorginho and Hudson-Odoi. With Hudson-Odoi on the right-hand side, now Chelsea had a legitimate wide threat that would hold the touchline and look to win 1v1 battles to deliver crosses into the box, and Jorginho playing in that holding midfield role would allow Kanté to push forward to provide more energy in and around Arsenal's box. What ended up happening was that Xhaka and Elneny still did a very good job of tracking the runs of Mount and Kanté in those half spaces to ensure that Chelsea couldn't have those 3v2 overloads in wide areas. Meanwhile, when we break down Arsenal's third goal, once again it involved the fullbacks pushing forward. We have Holding splitting Pulisic, who was blocking off the passing lane into Bellerin, and Mount, who was stepping to apply pressure to Elneny to find an unmarked Xhaka in acres of space in midfield beyond Kanté, while Saka checks into the ball, which forces Jorginho to step into Arsenal's half. When Xhaka receives the ball, he forces Jorginho to shift over to apply pressure, but the Arsenal midfielder aims to bypass the press by combining with Lacazette, who pulled Thiago Silva into Arsenal's half, and this is where we also see Bellerin beginning to push forward unmarked, as Chilwell has to recover his position and close down Smith Rowe because Chelsea's press was breached. Xhaka and Lacazette combined successfully to bypass Jorginho, and that now creates space to play in an unmarked Bellerin. When Xhaka slides the ball to the Arsenal right back in Chelsea's half, we can see Smith Rowe pegging back Chilwell, so the only Chelsea player that can attempt to halt the right back's run is the recovering Thiago Silva. As Bellerin pushes forward to Chelsea's box, he slides the ball to Smith Rowe, but then continues his run to drag away Thiago Silva, and that creates space for a squared pass into an unrushing Saka. When Saka receives Smith Rowe's pass, he is allowed to carry the ball freely into the box ahead of Thiago Silva and Kanté to increase Arsenal's lead from an unthinkable angle. And when we look to one final example, it's Elneny sliding a first-time ball across Jorginho that splits Kanté and Hudson-Odoi for Xhaka, and this is where we see Tierney preparing to search forward down the left channel. While Hudson-Odoi did poke the ball away from Xhaka, unfortunately for Chelsea, it fell into the path of Martinelli, dropping towards the halfway line ahead of a sliding James to direct a first-time pass into an unmarked Tierney. While Hudson-Odoi does a good job of tracking Tierney's run towards Chelsea's penalty area, it forces Zouma to shift across for cover, which creates a gap in the box for an unmarked Martinelli to float into, and that allows Tierney to pull the ball across Zouma and James into Martinelli, who allows the ball to roll across his body ahead of Thiago Silva pressure, but his low effort is pushed away by Mendy. Hi everybody, thanks for watching and subscribe here for your latest tactical analysis and daily commentary on the Interview show. And if that wasn't enough, don't forget you could find more organic, unfiltered soccer/football analysis on the Interviews podcast, the best soccer/football podcast in the world, available on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and any Android apps on your Android devices.